Heyo, welcome into the CHGO White Sox podcast, presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. Welcome into Studio A of our CHGO offices here in the West Loop of Chicago. I'm Sean Anderson, the host of the CHGO White Sox podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Sean_W_Anderson. Alongside me is the full CHGO White Sox crew. We got Vinnie Duber on the far left. You can follow him on Twitter at Vinnie Duber. He's our CHGO White Sox beat writer. And the man in the middle is Herb Lawrence.
Hello.
He's our CHGO White Sox community leader and repping the Braves today, huh?
It's a clean hat today.
Oh, it was just clean. It's the determination for Herb.
Dodger's hat was kind of dirty.
All right, so Herb's
got in the dishwasher.
Does that work?
Top rack. If you do the top rack only setting, yeah, it works.
Does it work for all hats or just the
fitted?
Just the nice
I haven't
regular ones.
Yeah, I haven't done it for anything else but fitted hats. But whenever you put them in the actual washer or dryer, they never come back right.
But I will say this, for the kind of hats that me and Sean like,
washable.
You can put those in the washing machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, maybe I'll try that. I've never washed any of my hats, so
It's
I think
been
it's
done. There's something about like maybe you throw the rubber band around the
the brim.
Throw the rubber band around or like maybe you're supposed to put them in there without any other clothes in there or something. You got to look it up, but there's a way.
I'm worried about my dishwasher because it's got like a steam function. So maybe I just steam the hat, or like, do I not turn on the drying function?
What you don't do if you're lazy, don't go to Google and be like, how do I clean my hat? Because they're going to tell you to make like a mixture with soap. You've got to soak it overnight in one of those Home Depot buckets. It's madness. It's way too much work. There has to be technology that will allow us to do this better.
I think a dishwasher pod will do the work, right? You know,
I would imagine
it'll smell lemony.
Make it work.
You know?
That's what, you... Do you use the one with lemon?
No.
That's the power of Pine Sol, baby.
Absolutely. I love the lemon.
You know which dishwasher powder I use?
What do you use?
Cascade.
Because you're a White Sox fan, that's why.
Straight.
There you go. Today on the White Sox podcast, we will be talking about the next manager of the Chicago White Sox. We got some names leaking out that may or may not be interviewing for the next job. Vinny also has a recent piece up on allchgo.com about this topic. We'll get into one of the main guys that has been reported to have an interview, Joe Espada. We'll also talk about the Astros and White Sox. I got some numbers from the 2019 prospect list, and I just want to show you guys. I'm not sure what to make of it. Maybe we can parse something out of there. We were asked on Twitter, are the White Sox doing everything in their power to develop players the right way? We'll try to have that little discussion there. And then finally, or at least we'll start off with this, Herb, you really want to talk about A.J. Brzezinski, huh?
I just love A.J. Brzezinski's play. Not necessarily the player in general. White Sox fans do love the guy and the player, but I was not a fan of his knuckleheadness or his heads-upness actually saved the White Sox in that ALCS. I just made up a word, Vinny, for you.
Knuckleheadness, yeah.
Knuckleheadness.
I like that one, to be quite honest with you. Knuckleheadery would perhaps have been preferred.
If you recall, the game before they had lost, I think Paul Bird pretty much shut down the White Sox, their first and only loss in the postseason of 2005. And so if AJ strikes out right there, it's the bottom of the ninth. We're going to the 10th with a bullpen for the Angels is pretty strong. And the White Sox have just used Mark Burley for the whole game, and so they got to go to their bullpen, which wasn't a problem, but it's also a roll of dice. Him going to first, and even though he struck out and Josh Paul caught that ball, was a heads-up play, which I think saved the White Sox, because then you got the pinch runner, Pablo Ozuna, get on, and then Joe Creedy with the ending double. So I think on this day, October 12th, 2005, we need to pay homage to A.J. Brzezinski for something that he did that helped the White Sox really propel them into winning the World Series. And that started the 4 games in a row of complete games by the White Sox starters.
We like to do trivia on this podcast. Do we remember the pitcher in that moment?
Who was throwing that?
Who threw the drop third strike?
Kelvin Escobar.
I was just about to say, we at my former employer, we did an entire, I want to say it was like over an hour long podcast breaking down this one game.
Oh, really?
We went back and we watched the game, and literally the thing that sticks in my head the most is, if you might remember, Herb, Jared Washburn was supposed to start one of those games for the Angels, and he was sick. He had the flu or something, and Joe Buck is explaining this on the broadcast, like, they had to leave him back in Anaheim. He couldn't come on the plane with the team because he was sick. So he got a commercial flight and flew on over to Chicago just to be here. we did this podcast at like the height of COVID.
Yeah.
And to hear somebody saying that a sick Major League Baseball player was getting on just a regular old United flight and coming across the country blew my mind. And that is the one thing that stuck with me from watching that game on replay, many, many years after the fact. But obviously, the thing too is that like all of that stuff that happened in that game happens in like the span of like a minute and a half.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's the AJ play, however Ozuna gets to second base, and then
he stole second base.
He stole second base, and then the Creedy hit, and boom, and that's the game. Right.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the umpire. Do you remember who the umpire was?
No.
Doug Eddings.
Oh, our guy.
Yeah, Doug Eddings, who's turned into not a great umpire. Maybe he wasn't great back then either, but he's had a couple games lately. I'm like, yeah. I'll still have that fond memory about you, Doug Eddings, when you messed up that call in favor of the White Sox. But, he's been turned into himself, not a great umpire. And I think Doug Eddings also called one of the either perfect game or no-hitters the White Sox had. I know Eric Cooper called one of them for Mark Burley because he had the matching 56 number as the umpire, as Mark Burley had on his jersey. But I'm sure Doug Eddings called one of those games and probably messed up a call or two.
Well, real quick, you mentioned that it was a bad call. Is it a bad call?
It was a terrible call. Josh Paul caught the ball in the air. Literally caught the ball.
There was no drop third strike.
Yeah. It was a terrible call.
I don't know.
It was an absolute horrible call. And later on in the World Series, Jermaine Dye acted like he got hit by a pitch, but it hit right off the barrel. Those plays wouldn't happen today with the replay that we have now. But, I'm glad it worked out for my team's favor, but I can call a spade where he called a ball that wasn't a drop third, and helped the White Sox win that game.
The only thing I could find on Doug Eddings and the White Sox is that back on June 22nd, Doug Eddings missed a season-high 29 calls in the Blue Jays-White Sox game with a correct percentage of 86.6%. So you're saying that his percentage would go down with the drop third calls strike.
Yes, he has just been consistently bad. And I remember he did the whole interview after, and he had a pool reporter ask him questions and said, did you see it? And he was like, no, I saw what I saw, and I thought I heard the double tap, and it didn't happen. Like literally, if you look back at the replays, slow it down, Josh Paul has his thumb part of his glove underneath and on the ground, and that hits the ball hits that in the glove and goes up. So it looks like the effect of hitting the ground, but it hits the meaty part of the glove.
There you go. And now, looking back at yesterday's game for the Astros and Mariners, Yordan Alvarez's walk-off home run had a win probability added of 91% because it was a walk-off home run.
I know nobody likes the Astros, but that was awesome.
That was awesome. Also, Robbie Ray coming in to close the game. That was awesome.
It's so funny that you see that kind of stuff in the playoffs after a team has so much success the entire season doing absolutely the opposite of that.
Why do that? Robbie Ray, we talk about these guys being creatures of habit, and what are you going to do? Not only throw the starter out for a save, which the White Sox did in 2005, shout out Mark Burley.
But they had a nice lead there.
And in the first game of the series, too.
And with runners on. Like, what? You're putting, we see Liam Hendricks crumble with, guys on. Some players just can't pitch with guys on. And you're
at the same time, people have become conditioned to watching playoff baseball that looks like this, too, that, had he brought in the reliever and that exact same thing happened, somebody would have been like, well, why didn't you bring in the best pitcher on your team? What are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, 100% somebody's going to say that.
Yep.
Seattle radio's filled up with people saying, well, Robbie Ray's available. Why isn't that pitcher till Saturday?
It gave me flashbacks of when Dylan Cease was warming up in the ninth inning of that Texas game where Michael Kopech left and then Johnny Cueto came in and we were all like, oh, is Dylan Cease going to be used for the save here? Was just warming up.
He was just throwing a bullpen.
Well, he was moved up, but it was weird seeing a player in the bullpen that wasn't getting ready. But I just wanted to bring up Yordan Alvarez with a 91% win probability added with that home run. AJ Brzezinski's drop third strike, 3% win percentage added. So just that drop third strike gave the Sox that little bit of edge there. And then that steal added 4% of win probability added. And then obviously Creedy knocked it home and made it 100%. It
was a great day. It was an awesome day. And I'm very happy that I lived through that. But it was a blur. The 2005 playoffs, it was just win after win after win. And it really didn't get to enjoy necessarily all of it. How a team kind of goes through the hardships and the struggles and then the enjoyment. It was pretty much all enjoyment for the White Sox. I mean, there was a couple hard parts with the El Duque thing, But otherwise, this shit was a breeze.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Jeff Blum game. I don't know if that one was a breeze.
There was, see, the thing
We're
was,
up 2-0 then at that time too.
You White Sox fans are very spoiled because you say it was a breeze, but it still had drama, right?
It had drama.
It was exciting, but it all worked out the way you wanted it to work out.
Everything was perfect.
There was no up and down. It was just a dramatic up all the way up.
Imagine if we were doing this post-game show in 2005 and the White Sox lose that first game in the ALCS to the Angels. We would have had so many comments. Wayne, Clark, Chi-Town,
you guys are all getting
Rusted,
called out.
All coming in here being like, blow it up. This
Paul
team
Bird
sucks.
How did they lose to Paul Bird?
Another generic right-hander.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He doesn't even spell his name right.
So, yeah, I mean, hopefully. I mean, that's what we were hoping for in 2022, that the White Sox would be able to turn it around. But in 2022, things didn't go to plan. Tony La Russa wasn't able to finish out the season, and that's why we're talking about a managerial search. So let's jump into this. Vinnie has a recent article up at allchgo.com talking about what the White Sox are looking for in their next manager. We did get some insight into their process and their thought process. What did the White Sox say they are looking for in their next manager?
Well, again, I think I said this the day of the press conference. You know, it sounded exactly like the press conference from 2 years earlier when Rick Hahn laid out all the criteria for the managerial job that went to Tony La Russa, who didn't really meet any of those criteria. But, Rick Hahn is confident that things are going to go differently this time, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see to see if he's right or not. I would tend to believe that it will go differently based on the way the last 2 years played out for the White Sox. But in terms of those criteria, you're basically talking about somebody who has recent experience with a winning team. And that's what it comes down to is the White Sox want to win. So, of course, they're going to try to find somebody who's done winning and done it in the environment in which the White Sox want to win, which is the present-day state of Major League Baseball. I think that's probably the one thing that jumped out to so many people about the La Russa hire was, wait a minute, Rick Hahn just said they wanted recent winning experience, and this guy hasn't been in the dugout since 2011. Now, Tony La Russa was quick to remind us, and he was right in doing so, that he had not been just, staring at a blank wall for 10 years. He was watching baseball and even part of winning front offices like he was in Boston. But certainly, I think Rick Hahn hammered home this time around. They want dugout experience from somebody who's been with a winning team recently. There are some other things that go with that. They again, trumpeted great communication, which I think you get better answers when you talk to the players about that because they're the guys who are being communicated to on a regular basis. They want somebody who knows how the game has evolved over the last decade or so. So, baseball, as we well know, and hey, if you'll notice by watching that A.J. Brzezinski game again, like I had to do a couple of years back, baseball's changed a lot just since 2005. And I think that to have somebody who knows that the buttons that they're going to push apply to today's game, which Tony La Russa, built a Hall of Fame career on making decisions a certain way. And so it makes sense that he wouldn't want to get away from that, right? But there were plenty of times where that decision-making process did not really line up with the way that things are done in today's game. So I think you really got to look at somebody who's got a resume full of teams that have been to the playoffs a whole bunch of times or have won the World Series. There are a little other extra things in there. It doesn't necessarily have to be a manager. And we're going to talk about Joe Espada, who's been a bench coach for a team that's had a lot of success on the field the last few years. But in addition to that, the whole no White Sox DNA thing. I don't think other than Miguel Cairo, you should expect them to see anybody who has been a part of this organization either as a player or something else in the past.
Well, you bring that name up. When we go back to the 2020 search after they fired Rick Renteria, Willie Harris was reported to be one of the finalists. He does have White Sox DNA. You watched the 2005 playoffs again for your old employer. Do we think Willie might be also an exception to that rule along with Miguel Cairo just because he's been a prior interviewee before?
I don't know. I think that's them going to somebody they know, right? I mean, that's kind of, and it's definitely not to say that Willie has not earned a shot at these interviews because I believe that he has. Certainly being part of a major league coaching staff for a couple of years now, and he had all that minor league managing experience with the White Sox organization. But I think really, if the last time around, this is what Rick said, we'd like to get some more perspectives and stuff like that. The result just smacked him or whoever you want to say in the face with being the complete opposite of what that was. And I think he really hammered home, really emphasized that this time around they want to get new perspectives, get new ideas. And it doesn't mean that everybody they talk to is going to be hired, right? You only get one manager, but think of all the different ideas you can get and all the different organizations you can learn about by talking to as many different people as possible. They have done things a certain way for the last many, many years. Ozzie Guillen, Robin Ventura, Rick Renneria, Tony La Russa. It's been a long time since they have had a manager from outside of the organization. They would serve themselves well to mix the stuff that Rick in the front office has done in building a roster over this rebuilding process with now getting new ideas that they can apply to that to try to get themselves over the hump.
And I would ask slick questions like, when you guys are facing the White Sox, if we're hiring you as the manager, how would you get us out? And would you do a good job of self-scouting on our own roster? And so let that person give you the answer and say, this is how the Houston Astros got the White Sox out. Here's how the Yankees got you out. This is how the Boston Red Sox got the White Sox out. And they get some information, some intel from the other organizations that maybe this person is not fully aware of if you ask slick enough questions where you're just saying, hey, Eloy Jimenez is up with a runner on second, and what do you do on a 2-1 pitch to him? Well, Eloy likes to swing at sliders a lot, so we're going to throw a slider on the outside edge, and usually Eloy will strike out. And we have this situation for Jose Abreu up and in. Sometimes we'll hit him. If we hit him, we hit him because he's pretty much the only power here on the White Sox. Kind of that type of information where they're giving you the book on how to get White Sox hitters out or how they attack White Sox pitchers, and then maybe you don't hire them, but you still got the intel out there. And as far as Willie Harris, the first point that Vinny brought up and what Rick Hahn brought up is recent world or championship experience on a championship caliber club. Cubs have not been that. So I think he's automatically out, and he's got the Sox DNA, which is also not that great.
My friend, though, Willie Harris has that championship DNA because he's got a 2005 ring. Hey, it's championship experience. We did get some clues, though, on who they might be interviewing, and this is coming from Jesse Rogers. White Sox are interviewing Astros bench coach Joe Espada in person today in Houston, and they've also reached out to Braves third base coach Ron Washington, among others. Jon Heyman was first tweeted about the Sox Espada news. So we'll talk about Joe Espada a little bit later after the break, but Ron Washington, you mentioned the recent experience currently with the Atlanta Braves right now as their third base coach. Ron, the former manager of the Texas Rangers. Names also been floated out of Bruce Bochy, and who else was the other name there?
Mike Schilt.
Bruce Bochy, Mike Schilt.
That was in Bob Nightingale's report the other day.
And Ron Washington were the three favorites, according to Bob Nightingale. So those three have prior experience. Thinking of Wash, though, what would he bring to the Sox that you like? You're wearing the A's hat, so I'm asking you first.
Braves. Keep reading A and thinking it's an A's hat. Come on, Sean.
I mean, when he was down in Texas, they went to 2 World Series. And, they should have won one, but, they had the wrong right fielder out there. He can get comfortable with that because they'll probably have the wrong right fielder out in 2023. So, yeah, there's people who speak the highest of praise for Ron Washington. All the people in Oakland, if you watch the movie Moneyball, he was one of the people who went with Scott Hattie or went with Billy Beane to scout Scott Hatteberg. And the funny line of the movie was like, first base is not that hard. It's incredibly hard. And that's Wash saying that answer. He had his own struggles with substance abuse when he was a player. And so he can relate in a personal way where anybody who's having struggles, since he had struggles and has worked himself way back up. Remember, on that team, Josh Hamilton was also there, and he was having current problems with substance abuse, and I wish him well in his travels going forward. But, he's gone back to that. But Wash, while in Texas, helped that man to, live day by day, to get sober, to stay sober. And I think Wash could relate to today's player because he's in that Atlanta Braves clubhouse. Lots of Hispanic cats, lots of white cats, lots of black cats. Culture is built in that whole clubhouse where they came from a team that had no aspirations like last year in the middle of 2021 and gathering players like Jock Peterson, gathering Rosario and other players to come up and be part of a collective unit and they stayed together. Even though they lost their best player and Ronald Acuna Jr. for the year, they still won a World Series. Wash was part of that, and that's probably because of Brian Schnicker's great leadership, and he's learned under a lot of great managers too. I mean, Brian Schnicker has just won a championship. Was it Art? I can't think of the guy. Art Howe in Oakland. So he knows the ways of how to manage, and also had a great record in Texas, even though it didn't end out well.
Yeah, I think 664 to 611, so well above 500 for Wash in Texas. But even you mentioned the Atlanta Braves last year. They had Freddie Freeman, who was there for over 10 years, 11 years as the cornerstone first baseman. Wash has seen, a cornerstone first baseman leave. If the White Sox do plan on letting Jose Abreu go, maybe he'd be able to give some guidance on what that experience is like. But I do want to bring up age. Washington is 70, Bruce Bochy 67, Mike Schiltz 54, so I'm not too concerned about his age. But Tony being 78, I think he recently turned 78, so happy birthday, Tony. Is that a concern of hiring an older manager for this Sox team, Vinny, do you think?
It shouldn't be. I think the only reason that people would ever bring it up is in relation to the fact that Tony La Russa was just the manager. I think that there were very reasonable questions at the beginning of Tony's managerial tenure that you would ask of someone not of his age, but of his own personal background, and perhaps his age influenced that on his own personal background. But it's ageist, in my opinion, to say you can't have that guy, he's 70 plus. I think you pick the guy who is the correct fit with this team regardless. Tony did not end up being the correct fit, and I don't believe that it was just because of when his birthday was. I think that there is something to be said for the energy that somebody of any age can bring. You know what I mean? There are guys who can fire up a clubhouse at age 60-something, at age 70-something. It doesn't have as much to do with that, in my opinion. That being said, oftentimes a hire of a position like this will be in response to the person who held the position before it. And I think that if you were to hire somebody else who was in their 70s, if you're the White Sox, that is the first thing that the fans are going to react to. That doesn't mean it's a bad hire. And so they're going to make the hire that they think is the right hire. But when it comes to how fans are going to react to that hire, it is undoubtedly going to be colored by the way that things just went with Tony La Russa.
Yeah, and I don't think Ron Washington has any notable health issues that have been made public, but at least Bruce Bochy has had multiple heart procedures done most recently back in 2015, but he's also dealt with arrhythmia with his heart as well. So I do wonder if that plays into the factor of Bruce Bochy possibly returning to managing or not. But they'll have to make that decision, and they'll obviously talk to those people and see how they feel. Joe Maddon, though, also older, 68. He's been in the news recently. He's going to be on the CHGO Cubs podcast tomorrow, which is pretty cool. They're going to go live at 1:20. So if you're looking for some baseball talk, you're listening for some Chicago baseball talk, Joe Maddon will be on with the CHGO Cubs guys tomorrow. But Joe Maddon as a possible fill-in here, prior managerial experience, prior winning experience as well. 2016 isn't that long. I mean, what do we think? There was a report from Mike
Rodriguez. That's a long time ago. Then Bruce Bochy in 2014 is a very long time ago.
Right. Well, and you mentioned too, I
definitely wouldn't want him either.
Idea about Tony stepping away, it's not really about his age. It was about how long he was away from the game. Someone brought up, why I really want Ozzy, and it's well, it makes sense. You were a first grader when Ozzy won. You have, Ozzy in this certain light, and many people, we saw this when Tony was hired. Back in '83, they were first graders, and Tony La Russa was the coolest because he helped the White Sox win the AL Central Championship in '83. I just think that the fact that it still goes with Tony was out for 10 years, Ozzy's been out for 9 years. I see that as a huge detriment to Ozzie Guillen's case as a manager. And that's it's not really an age thing with me. With Tony looking back at it, it was the absence of that game. So Joe Maddon was just recently a manager in LA.
Yeah, and I think that his comments were with inside the clubhouse, where he was pretty much not bemoaning analytics, but pretty much saying that it's taken over the game. When people are zigging, we need to zag. So he wants to go back to more of a gut game. He doesn't mind analytics, but also he thinks that the game has been inundated with way too much of the numbers instead of scouts, instead of scouting reports, instead of gut feelings and things like that. I think it just goes against what the White Sox are looking for. What Rick Hahn said he was looking for. I don't know. Even when they won the World Series, ask any Cub fan. They actually act like Joe Madden was trying to lose the World Series for them. Ask any Cub fan. Man, he took Kyle Hendricks out after only one run. He was dealing with Cleveland. Take him out. John Lester comes in and gives up immediate home run. So with the managers don't matter that much type of conversation, I don't know if he makes this team go to the next level, which we want, or just a guy that's a steadying force for the White Sox and allows the players to do their best. I don't think he's that anymore. I love his stories. I loved him when I was on the Score and he would go on with Lawrence. I can listen to him talk all day long, but I don't know if he's the right manager for these 2023 White Sox team and the beyond years, because I just know that he has a time on all that motivational talk, and it ends after a while, and people start shutting that down and stop listening to Joe Madden. And I don't know if that word's got around to the rest of the league, and it might, end early with the White Sox.
Well, and what I'll say too, I think this applies to Madden, it applies to Bochy, it applies to a lot of guys. The number one criteria for the White Sox might be winning. But guess what? Tony La Russa did an awful lot of winning. Right. I mean, even if you didn't like the Tony La Russa hire, and many White Sox fans did not, I don't think it was arguable that Tony La Russa knew how to take teams to the World Series, knew how to win the World Series. He got 3 rings on his fingers. It didn't make it a successful hire. No. And if the guy who you brought in is one of the winningest managers of all time, and he couldn't get the job done, then obviously that's not the entire piece of the puzzle. And that's why Rick Hahn listed a bunch of different things that we should and are talking about. But Joe Madden, Bruce Bochy, they've got rings on their fingers, but it doesn't mean that's not the only thing you can point to, because then every manager all the time would only be somebody who's won a World Series, and obviously that's not true. Right. So it needs to go in multiple directions. And listen, as I've said the last few days when we've been talking about this, of course they should interview Joe Madden. They should interview Joe Madden. They should interview everybody, because that's how you accomplish what Rick said, which is getting fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. Joe Madden might not have the idea that sounds very good to them on the whole numbers front or using front office information, but I bet he's got some good ideas that they haven't been exposed to in some other areas. And if they hear that from him, they might go, "Oh, that's interesting. We might look into do something like that."
Well, I think with this current regime of Kenny, Rick, and Jerry, I think Joe Madden works with those 3. Like, I think I took away what Lawrence Holmes took away. He ended up interviewing Joe Madden, asked him about the White Sox job, and it just felt like Joe really, you mentioned the word inundate. Like, he just didn't want too much information going to these players. Like, it was more like you need to give them a nugget, and like, this is where we think you can take strides, because again, hitters are creatures of habit. They're not really going to listen to you, so you need to give them something that they can latch onto, and that's what Joe was trying to say. It really felt like he wanted to be the one person who was giving the message. And you mentioned, the fact that like his message kind of wears out. I think him coming and delivering that message to players really helps Joe take that connection to the next level. To be fair to Joe too, 27-17 before they had like a crazy long losing streak this year that ended him getting fired. So I mean, he was winning a little bit.
Well,
with
and
LA
also
this year.
He was managing the Angels, and the Angels have plenty of evidence that came before Joe Madden to show us that it's hard to take the Angels to the playoffs.
Right, especially when Mike Trout's hurt. Right. If Mike Trout was healthy, they might have had more success
still hit
there.
40 home runs. Ridiculous.
Yeah, like the thing is Joe Madden with this current front office, I think could work. I think that he has a good demeanor. I think he's very much the CEO type that we'd be looking for. I just worry that they wouldn't be taking a step forward. It would just be another comfortable hire, where I think a guy like Joe Espada, who we'll talk about right after this ad break, will push them to be different.
He'll look at that 5-man R&D like, man, perfect.
Right, yeah.
Don't even hire nobody else, man.
There's 5 guys I have to
and
ignore.
Shelley Duncan, man, perfect guy on my bench.
He'll keep him on staff. It's easy. This football season, PointsBet's bringing you a better way to bet live on games. So tomorrow, when you are watching the Chicago football team play against the Washington football team,
it means
did they change their names to line up with Washington football team?
I don't know if we are allowed to say the nicknames. I think the nicknames are copyrighted.
That's a sweet Chicago football team hat you're wearing, Sean.
That I agree. That is a great great Chicago football team, Matt. But when you're watching that game tomorrow, you can place a live same-game parlay bet. You could bet on the next drive to be a touchdown and cash out your live second-half over bet. With PointsBet, you have access to more football markets than ever before, and you can build the live perfect same-game parlay by combining your favorite bets during the game, including spreads, totals, player props, and more. You could also choose the next outcome of the drive and next points with PointsBet's Lightning Bets. I did this on Sunday night with Baltimore and Cincinnati. It's very fun. On the fourth drive, you can guess if Justin Fields is going to lead the team to a touchdown. Maybe you're really being real pessimistic. Maybe you'll predict a punt. Maybe you're predicting an interception. It's a fun way to win money, and it's lightning fast. And you could do that on the move or on the couch, but no matter what, when you're betting, do it live on PointsBet. Download the PointsBet app today and sign up with the code CHGO to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. And if you or somebody you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services. And our next partner is Pins and Aces. They are the official golf apparel partner of CHGO. We love our Pins and Aces gear. Our guy Steven, our producer, gets tons of compliments on and off the course when he's rocking his Pins and Aces gear.
What was the most recent compliment you received, Steven?
People love the beer sleeve more than anything else.
Do they?
They love the beer sleeve. Because you could just, if you take out, like I can't hit my 3-wood. I put the beer sleeve right in there. It fits in perfectly. 7 beers, good to go. Got the whole round going right there.
It's innovative. Has anyone said, like, wow, that's an innovative beer sleeve?
Not in those exact words, but that's the exact thought they're going for.
These are the exact words I have. An innovative product that allows you to store 7 beers right inside your golf bag and keep those drinks cold the entire round. Also, Pins and Aces is a family-owned golf and apparel business. They make amazing polos, hats, golf bags, and again, even the beer sleeve. So this Christmas, this holiday season could be a perfect gift for the golfer in your life for the 2023 season. So check out pinsandaces.com and use code CHGO to receive 15% off your first order, and you'll get free shipping. Again, when you use code CHGO, you'll get 15% off your first order and free shipping at pinsandaces.com. All right, let's get into Joe Espada. Joe Espada is currently the bench coach with the Houston Astros. He joined after the whole cheating scandal, so we don't have to worry about a Carlos Beltran thing here. Joe Espada joined in 2018.
Replaced Alex Cora, the now manager of the Boston Red Sox.
There you go. And who was also had his own cheating scandal as well.
Yes. Got his job back, though.
Yes, he did. Joe Espada was with the Astros from 2018 to currently. Before that, he was with the Yankees from 2015 to 2017. And then before that, he was with the Marlins from 2010 to 2013. Prior to that, he was in the minor leagues and has worked his way up. Formerly a second-round pick of the Oakland A's. Never made it to the major leagues, and he even mentioned that later on in his minor league career, they were keeping him around to basically be a player coach. You are some insurance, but also we want you to mentor some guys. So Joe Espada has lived the life of a baseball player, was born in Puerto Rico, played for the national Puerto Rico team, then moved to Mobile, Alabama, played college ball there, hit over 400, then was drafted in the second round. So Joe Espada has been a baseball lifer. I do want to give a huge shout out to, let me get the name, Jonathan Gelnar. He hosts the Head of the Curve podcast, and this is a fantastic insight to Joe Espada. It's an hour and 20 minutes long. We're going to play a couple clips here, but I want to talk first about communication, building trust in the clubhouse. And there was the report earlier this year from Bob Nightingale that there are cliques in the White Sox clubhouse. So if there are cliques, how would you unite a team? How is Joe Espada seen the best way to unite a baseball team?
You know what? First starts with trust, and we already touched on that earlier. You know, I think without trust, teamwork cannot be built. You know, I think trust allows relationships to work. And also establishing a culture of trust, and a culture of freedom, a sense of freedom within the clubhouse where everyone can be themselves. I'm not talking about, not only the players, but also the coaches in the front office. You know, when you walk into our clubhouse here in Houston, it's something that we're taking pride on, and is our culture. You know, it's our players love to be around each other. They love each other. They hold each other accountable. So being part of something like that and building something like that is imperative for a team success. So you touch on, the different, culture barriers, which, inside our clubhouse, you got the Latino players, you got the American players, and just because Latino players speak Spanish doesn't mean that they all are the same. And that's not the case. There is different cultures. A Cuban player has different stories. than a Venezuelan player. Yeah, they have Spanish in common, but the Venezuelan player right now is going. Their country is going through some turmoil when it comes to their government. So those are personal experiences, personal stories that they share with you, that it matters. Because if things are not good at home, they're not going to be good at the office. Cuban players, someone like Julian, Aletmi Diaz, and Alvarez, how they came from Cuba to the U.S., listening to their stories, understanding their stories, being able to relate with their stories. Some days they come in, they have something going on at home, which we really don't understand, but we got to take time to understand where they came from. So not only learning the language, but learning the culture. And I do the same with the American players. I take time getting to know them at a personal level. So when it's time for me to coach them, there's that human connection that we can vote with, that we could all see eye to eye and bring everything together for a common goal, which is win a World Series.
So Joe Espada saying you need to know every single one of your 26-man personally so you can create that deep bond and that you could all establish a common goal of winning the World Series. Makes a lot of sense, but I think he's a really elegant speaker. What did you guys make of it? I also think you would have loved the word accountability that he used.
Yeah, and what he said is what I was asking for in a couple episodes before this one, is knowing the man and coaching the man specifically to his, wants, dislikes, all the stuff that you need to know about the person. Sometimes a kick in the butt, sometimes an arm around the shoulder. And knowing the man, you can actually decipher that, what he needs right now in this context. And it was a great story he told right there, a different type of Spanish-speaking players having different type of moods and things going on at home, how they got over here, like the Cuban story of Jose Abreu, how he got over his harrowing. And he said the American players, too, you don't know what's going on in their lives either. They came from a different lifestyle than maybe Joe Espada did in Puerto Rico, then moving to Alabama. So he can probably relate to a lot of different players by speaking their language literally and figuratively. And I like that clip right there, which is such a beautiful clip. It seems like he gets it. It seems like throughout his life of playing baseball, all his career, being with the Marlins, being a front office assistant under Brian Cashman with the Yankees, and now his experience with the Houston has taught him a lot of a worldly view, and it seems like he has all the things that Rick Hahn was speaking about. Like, literally, I'm looking at that clip and listening to that clip, and I'm listening back to what Rick Hahn said. That's him. That's the guy he was talking about, if I'm going to be given a guess. Joe Espada's the guy he was talking about.
It's an attribute that not all of these managerial candidates are going to have. And that's nothing against those guys. Heck, Tony La Russa speaks Spanish. But there's another layer of that communication element, and think how much easier it is for be it Joe Espada, be it Miguel Cairo, to interact with some of these players. Because you have the cultural understanding to go along with the ability to speak the language. And I think Tony La Russa was in a better position than a manager who might only speak English. But think about what better position some of these other guys are going to be in, being guys who have the cultural understanding to go along with the ability to do the bare minimum, verbal communication. And I think that, in my opinion, something like that should put a candidate above some other ones when you're talking whether it's Joe Espada, who we just heard from, whether it's Miguel Cairo, who showed he was able to make waves in a positive way in that clubhouse, or some of the other guys that we're going to be talking about today and in the weeks to come. But in my opinion, being able to communicate on not just one but many different levels is essential, because I would argue that while all the fans are going to look at managerial responsibilities, what's the most important thing? That they write the lineup that I want to see, that they make the pitching changes that I want to see. The most important thing that a manager does is not on the field. It is in the clubhouse. And if you can find somebody who hits all those notes positively, and listen, Tony La Russa got good reviews for it, but if you can find somebody that hits them in an even more positive fashion in ways that Tony La Russa just couldn't even, start to be able to do, then you're moving in the positive direction.
And some powerful stories, too, that we've thought about in past, White Sox history of managers connecting with players. I think of Rick Renteria going with Tim Anderson in Minnesota to the site of the George Floyd murder, and just what that meant to Tim and what it meant to the team and having that backing of a manager. And I think that Joe Espada shows that type of leadership. If that was really that important to Tim and he was the manager of the White Sox, it just feels like that would be something that he would go out and do as well. It just seems like making those personal connections, those behind-the-scenes things are huge for Joe Espada. And part of that, too, was being that minor league coach, being that veteran guy in the minor leagues that never made it up to the major leagues. He said that he learned to put ego aside while he was a manager down in the minor leagues, and that kind of when he was talking, he learned that it's best to let everyone else speak up first. And then I kind of thought about Cairo's late season success of where it seemed like it was Miguel Cairo managing, and he was going to let the pitching coach handle the pitchers. The hitting coach handled the hitters. He kind of talked about making sure it was a collaborative effort. It really seems like Joe Espada understands that as well, and we did see some late season success, even though it was a small sample from the Sox doing that. The next part I want to go to, his background. He worked with the Yankees and the Astros for the past two, since 2015, was hired as the third base coach for the Yankees, and has been with those two organizations. So what has he learned from the Yankees and Astros, and what can he bring to the White Sox if hired?
Well, hindsight, you see the talent on the field. Let's just not hide that. They really good players, but I always said that talent is not enough. You need more than talent to win World Series and put your team in a position to get to the World Series. But there's three things that I saw in New York, and I saw that, and I see here in Houston. And number one always starts with, like, both organizations, they embrace technology, the new ways of how to evaluate players, how to draft players, how to use data to help your players become better players. That's one thing that adapted to the new changes in the game, and they do it quickly. The second thing I've seen is talent acquisition, but I'm talking about not only on the field, but I'm talking about throughout the whole entire organization. In the front office, R&D department, minor league coaches, they hire some not only smart people, but people that can connect and understand both sides, both technology and also understand the human side, how you're working with, with players. But also these people understand our culture. We bring them in and understand that we are all here for the common goal, which is trying to improve our players, trying to do whatever it takes to adjust, especially during adversity, and how are we going to make sure that we all stay together and provide the best information for our players, for our coaches, so when we take the field, we all are ready to go. So those are things that I've seen that both organizations have done really well. And another quick note, Jonathan, one thing I also wanted to mention about both of these organizations is how throughout the system they provide coaches with the technology that they need to help their players and help their coaches become better. So, the technologies that we use on the major league level, they have it throughout their system. Players are able to look at video, look at data the same way we look at it in Houston. Coaches are able to collect information to create their own shift defensive sheets. You know what I'm saying? So when they get to the major league level, they know exactly how we do it, and we are all in the same page. So those are three things that I've seen in both New York and Houston that they both do really, really well.
Again, shout out to Ahead of the Curve, the Ahead of the Curve podcast hosted by Jonathan Gelnar. That's where these clips were taken from, the interview with Joe Espada. It's an hour and 20 minutes long. You get great insight to Joe Espada. And the three things that he mentioned: technology, talent acquisition, and then I would also say organizational wide access to technology. And at least seemed like the Sox, even before Espada even came here, like it seemed that Project Birmingham was at least an acknowledgement of, let's make sure all of our best prospects are getting the best coaching, the access to our best facility, and the access to the technology. So at least thinking about the three things that he brought up, it seemed like the Sox are starting to understand that filtration of not only the major leagues guys using all of our great technology, but the entire minor leagues being exposed to that.
And yeah, in what he said there, those two teams are proactive in technology, and the thirst and the hunger for more is undying for those things. They stay up on trends, and you could say the Astros, yes, use technology to everybody else's detriment and use technology unfairly, but that banner hangs. For most Astros fans, that is a thing that is legitimate. And so I know he wasn't with them at that time, but they do use technology currently to help them do the things that they did yesterday, coming back from a big deficit, hitting a walk-off home run for Yordan Alvarez that they've turned into a phenomenal designated hitter and a phenomenal power hitter. And so if he could bring a modicum of that, even just what I was asking for, like they hired Joe Espada and he says, hey, man, the Marlins want me, Houston still wants me, this team, that team, and that team wants me. For me to come to you, Chicago, I need to be comfortable from what the stuff I've had access to with Houston. So I need some more R&D. I need some more research. I need some more analytic people. I need to have my coaching staff be my coaching staff. And if that means, be it, Ethan Katz has to go, I am not a fan of that, but I'm always a fan of the head boss who's going to be in charge of these players, in charge of that wins and losses, to be in charge of the people who are below him. So it seems like he would bring something else to the table as far as manpower and actual research and development for this team. So he said when they hit the field, they are armed with all the stuff that they need. They can just go out and play baseball. And I think that's a great way of having a manager go about his business every day.
Listen, that he said all the right things there, and like you said, they all line up with what Rick Hahn was talking about. There's a reason this guy's been interviewed for a lot of managerial openings. He seems like somebody who is going to get that chance very soon, and if he proves to be the best guy for the job, then absolutely the White Sox are going to find that out. I would encourage folks to not, equate winning an interview or winning a press conference with winning a baseball game or winning a World Series. What was it? Our guy Adam Hogue told you on Twitter, I don't know, I heard AJ Brzezinski on the radio and I think he'd be great. That doesn't always equal the same thing with the resume there, but certainly Joe Espada does have the credentials being around a just incredibly successful organization. I mean, listen, say anything about the Astros you want, they deserve it, and they earned the negative attention that they continue to get in every road ballpark to this day. But if you were to draw up the kind of success that you would want to have in Major League Baseball in the way that things are currently, going, where we don't really have dynasties, we don't really have teams that win a whole bunch of championships in a row, you would draw up what the Houston Astros have done over the last decade.
Absolutely. So why not pick from that fleet? Why not pick from that organization? I think it would make sense. And two, Espada is close with Kevin Long. Kevin Long is currently the hitting coach with the Phillies, but he was hired and brought in on that Joe Girardi staff, so I'm not sure if Rob Thompson wants him to stay. I'm not sure if Kevin Long wants to stay. Kevin Long, formerly the hitting coach of the Nationals when they won a World Series, former hitting coach of the Mets, and former hitting coach of the Yankees when they won a World Series as well. Kevin Long and Espada have a good connection, and there's the story back from last year where Schwarber was with the Nationals and Kevin Long taught him this certain T-drill, and that's when Schwarber started going off on this run. So I would like to bring in some fresh blood, because I know people have brought up Frank Menachino and what's his status. Joe Espada also might mean Kevin Long, which I would be a huge fan of. So I do think that if Joe Espada was hired, it might be bringing the Sox in the right direction. A hire like Joe Madden might keep things as the status quo. So I think Espada is a vote for the future if we're making up campaign slogans here. But I want to let you know about PointsBet. This football season, PointsBet's bringing you a better way to bet live on games. And this means before this ad's over, you can place a live same-game parlay bet. You could bet on the next drive to be a touchdown and cash out your live second-half over bet. So whether you're on the move or on the couch, do it live on PointsBet. My pick of the week is Kansas +9. I like Kansas to cover 9 points against against Oklahoma. Oklahoma's quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, might be out, but even then, I don't think they have enough talent to keep up with Kansas. You might be saying Jalen Daniels, the quarterback for Kansas, might be out, but Jason Beam, his backup, threw for 4 touchdowns against TCU, and TCU is a better team than Oklahoma. Just go look at the time when Oklahoma and TCU faced off. So I do like Kansas +9. That's your PointsBet pick of the week. Download the PointsBet app today and sign up with code CHGO to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. And if you or somebody who has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services. And our next partner, Chi-Town Custom Cornhole. If you ever come out to our tailgates, you will see these beautiful boxes that Chi-Town Cornhole have made. You can check them out at ChiTownCornhole.com. They're the #1 cornhole provider for the Chicagoland and Illinois area since 2007, and their signature box style can be digitally printed, covered in vinyl, and painted. Their cornhole boards also come with built-in drink holders that are recessed in on the back. They have LED lights that light up the holes and handles for easy carrying. You don't have to carry it from like the back, the back spine, right? You have nice little handles to pick it up and carry. So it's very convenient. You can play it at night, and if you're coming out to any of our CHGO tailgates, the next one's on November 6th, you'll be able to see the fantastic CHGO cornhole boxes that Chi-Town Cornhole has made for us. They're veteran-owned and operated, and they can ship anywhere and offer local pickups. So check out Chi-Town Cornhole today if you are looking for the next gift in your life. Maybe you got a tailgater that you're looking to set up, maybe for some Illinois football, so Chicago football. Check out Chi-Town Cornhole and make sure you get your boxes from there.
Night bags.
Bags.
Play little night bags.
Night bags. I like it. I like night bags. I also feel weird saying cornhole. Like bags is just it's simpler. It's
Chicago thing, man.
4 letters.
Bags. Go play some bags.
Let's go play some bags. All right, let's go into the final thing here. We mentioned Yordan Alvarez and his amazing home run last night. And I had a question on Twitter from our guy Kerry Herb from the 108 and from Believe Southside with him and Steve-O, who was on the podcast for a bit.
And congratulations to Steve-O and his new wife.
All right.
Just got married this weekend.
There you go. Congratulations to those two. I didn't even realize they got married or that was their wedding date. So shout out to them. But I do want to go to Kerry's question. And Kerry said, serious question. If these two teams switched, a.k.a. the Astros and White Sox, would the Sox have the same start of if these two switched, being Yordan Alvarez and Eloy Jimenez, would they have the same type of start to their career as they would have? I fully believe the Sox would have messed up Yordan's development too. Maybe that's just me. This is in response to me posting the 2019 top 100 prospects from MLB.com. Eloy Jimenez ranked 3rd. Yordan Alvarez was ranked, I think it was 44th. So how does Yordan Alvarez become this monster destroying baseballs from the left-handed side, and Eloy Jimenez hasn't really been able to live up to the billing of possibly a 30 home run hitter? I just wanted to look into this discussion, and we've talked about it before. Do the White Sox screw up development? There are numbers popping in your screen, but I'll just throw it off to Herb first. When you look at this, and at least you look at the Yordan versus Eloy situation, what do you make of the Sox and development?
I think the White Sox development is not great, but the Yordan Alvarez Jimenez thing, I think the only thing that holds Jimenez back is health. That's literally the only thing, well, his glove, but his health. Like they would both be designated hitters in my lineup, and I think they would both hit 40-plus home runs in my lineup. I don't think the Sox development on Eloy Jimenez has been bad, except for him not either listening to them say don't be running into people or don't slide or don't jump, and him up until this point, up until the second half, not wanting to be a designated hitter. Now, I think he still doesn't want to be it. I think he, in this offseason, had to do some soul searching. If he's back with the White Sox, will know that he has to be a designated hitter. So for that individual matchup, I just think Eloy's health is the problem. As far as getting to the major leagues, having the player established in the minor leagues as a number 3 prospect overall, whatever Luis Robert was, and from them being major league players, there's been very little growth. Tim Anderson, from the player he started off as a major league player to the player he is now, amazing growth. Same thing with Dylan Cease, amazing growth. Luis Robert, you could put the health thing in there too, but there's been times, and we said it yesterday, he was a Gold Glover in 2020. He was not close to the Gold Glove guy that showed up in 2020 this year in 2022. His jumps were worse. His sprint speed was worse. He doesn't catch as many balls as he did back then. That was just 2 years ago. Have the injuries caught up with him that much? Or is he just not developing into the player that we both think he is and Vinny thinks he's going to be? That's a problem. That's a problem with a lot of these White Sox players where they don't hit their potential. Yoan Moncada in 2019 was going to shoot for the moon. And the 2021 season was a great season, but it wasn't like the ascension that White Sox fans wanted to see. And so they're like, okay, he's doing this plateau. He's not going anywhere, and he's going to fall off the cliff, which he did this year. So that development hasn't happened either. You could see the Michael Kopech's development. They've done very well by him. So it's a mixed bag with the White Sox. Now, Houston, you saw those players. Kyle Tucker was a highly ranked prospect. He's come up and done the job. Yordan Alvarez, highly ranked prospect, come up and done the job. For the most part, their guys come up and they do a great job. And if they don't, they're quick to get rid of them. Immediately. Like, okay, this guy's not good. Get him out of here immediately.
And let me go through the rankings here. Both of them had 6 prospects in the top 100. For the White Sox, it was Eloy 3rd, Michael Kopech 18th, Dylan Cease 21st, Luis Robert 40th, Nick Madrigal 47th, Dane Dunning 80th. Average rank for those 6 players, 34.8. For the Astros, Forrest Whitley was the 7th-ranked prospect, Kyle Tucker the 8th-ranked prospect, Yordan Alvarez the 4th-ranked prospect, Josh James the 62nd-ranked prospect, Corbin Martin the 81st-ranked prospect, and J.B. Bukauskas the 97th-ranked prospect. Average ranking of 49.8 there. And you look at the career WARs, those 6 players for the White Sox have combined for 26.1 WAR. That is counting just the seasons that Madrigal and Dunning have played for the Sox. And then for the Astros side, 25.4 WAR. So, and really the 2 players that have played for them are Kyle Tucker and Alvarez. I mean, those are the 2 that are making up those numbers right there, who have been able to stay healthy, both Alvarez and Tucker. So maybe that's the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very odd question to answer. Well, I mean, I don't know if this question can be answered, or let's put it this way: I don't know if what the person who asked this question, I don't know if that can be gleaned from just looking at this information, because those White Sox guys, three of those White Sox guys, Robert, Jimenez, and Kopech, just, I mean, ravaged by injuries, and also though incomplete. You know what I mean? Like, Yordan Alvarez is Yordan Alvarez. That's awesome for him, and that's great. And you can make that that judgment now. We're not at a point where we can determine whether the Eloy Jimenez experiment worked or the Luis Robert experiment worked. Really, any of those guys. The jury is still out, and I don't know if that's the case with at least Yordan Alvarez. Maybe a little more so with Kyle Tucker, who's younger and has a lot more time left ahead of him. But also, you showed the White Sox side of that column. All of those guys are major league starters. On the Astros side of those columns, 4 of those 6 players are nothing. Right. And so for the 2 best players out of everybody on this board to be Astros, that's very true. But the 3rd through 9th best players on this board are all White Sox, and everybody else you can just forget about, kind of 3rd through 8th, whatever. But and so that's what I would say. I would point to that as, I don't know if we can answer this question, or I don't know if we can figure out anything about how good or bad the White Sox are at major league player development based on solely this information. I will say this: Yordan Alvarez is very good. Kyle Tucker is very good. The Astros are very good. The White Sox have a lot of guys who get injured all the time and need to stop doing that so they can hopefully, in the eyes of the organization and their fans, be good.
Well, yeah, and maybe that's the thing is, you switch spots and maybe the injury luck is better for Luis Robert in Houston, or maybe it stays the absolute same. And, we look at the postseason press conference for Rick Hahn. That was one of the things that he got somewhat specific on, was how they're trying to build out that rehab department of their organization, the injury and health organization part. They're trying to build it out and make sure it's more conducive to keeping these players healthy. So maybe it is just health in that. Just Yordan versus Eloy, though. Yordan has played 251 games at DH and 107 games in left field. Eloy has played 77 games at DH and 235 games in the outfield. So I would like to just burn Eloy's glove. They did that basically with Yordan, and Yordan, even last night, had a great throw from left field. So, I mean, he's still out there playing well when he's out there. I mean, Eloy just doesn't really show that. I mean, Yordan just might be the better player. But to go into some of the things that you brought up too, Vinny, Forrest Whitley, injured, hasn't made a start for the Astros ever. Josh James has been up and down between the minor leagues and major leagues, still in their organization.
It's like a bullpen arm, though, too.
Yeah, he's a bullpen arm. And then Corbin Martin and J.B. Bukauskas, the 2 last names on there, they were turned into Zach Greinke for 5.2 WAR, But you look at Nick Madrigal and Dane Dunning, that was turned into Lance Lynn. That was then also turned into Craig Kimbrell. That was turned into A.J. Pollock. So if you take Lynn, Kimbrell, and Pollock, that's 6.7 WAR. So the two players that the Astros traded, 5.2 WAR. The two players that the Sox traded, 6.7 WAR. So they've been able to get something out of these guys. It's just mainly, keeping these guys healthy. So maybe that's the turnaround in 2023. If Robert's healthy, if Michael Kopech's healthy, and Eloy Jimenez is healthy, maybe that means big things for the White Sox in 2023. So
I guarantee that if all three of those guys are healthy, the White Sox are a playoff team.
It's a hard guarantee, though.
That's an easy guarantee.
Herb Namath.
You want to trade Eloy Jimenez because you're not sure if he's going to stay healthy. How is that an easy guarantee?
And you just guarantee me that Eloy's going to be healthy along with Luis Robert and Michael Kopech. I'm in.
You're confusing.
That's the problem.
But will Jesse Winker be healthy?
That's the question.
He'll be healthy in some other city. If you tell me Eloy's going to play 150, I ain't trading him ever.
If you play him at DH, you might. That's Vinnie Duber. You can follow him on Twitter at Vinnie Duber. He's our CHGO White Sox beat writer. He's got a brand new article published on allchgo.com, so make sure you check that out. You can go a little bit more in depth on what the Sox are looking for at manager in 2023. That's Herb Lawrence. You can follow him on Twitter at Actorwall23. He's our CHGO White Sox community leader. And I'm Sean Anderson. You can follow me on Twitter at Sean_W_Anderson. I'm the host of the CHGO White Sox podcast. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us in the chat. Thank you to Jonathan Gellner for giving us the access to that interview with Joe Espada. I'm very excited to play that stuff for you guys so you can at least get an idea of what Joe Espada is like. He interviewed today down in Houston for that job. So we'll see if any news follows from that. We will be with you tomorrow at 4 p.m.
Eli's in the house.
And Eli's in the house. Shout out to Eli. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to Stephen Nicholas for producing the show. We'll talk to you tomorrow.